Are you serious right now? You're the one with the issue here. Why haven't you paid for the accommodation? You're the one who left me, after all. Just bring the money. I'm not going to pay because I'm the one who was abandoned. I didn't even want to go on that trip in the first place. My husband and I have been married for 6 years, and we have an adorable 5-year-old daughter. Watching her grow up every day is the highlight of my life. However, my relationship with my husband has hit rock bottom. I quit my job when our daughter was 1, and my husband told me that since I wasn't working, all the household chores would fall on me. So, I took on all the housework and raised our child by myself. When our daughter was a newborn, I struggled to get enough sleep. I even asked my husband for help, but he coldly responded that he'd divorce me if I had a problem with it. He showed me the completed divorce papers and placed them in a drawer right in front of me. And every time there was an issue, he'd pull out those papers and mention divorce with a look of disgust on his face. And my mother-in-law, who raised a son like him, is just as bad. She always visits unannounced, opens the fridge without asking, and starts eating our son's yogurt. If that were all she did, I might tolerate it, but she goes on and on lecturing me about how a wife should behave, especially after my husband complains about me. She inspects the corners of the house for dust and criticizes me constantly. So, when she says she has good news, I can't trust it. What's wrong with you? You should be happier that I'm going to tell you some good news, she says, clearly annoyed. You're really not nice. My son was right. What's the news? I ask, bracing myself. We're going on a trip, she announces. Where to? I reply, trying to sound interested. It's your job as an unemployed person to figure that out, she snaps. What do you mean? I ask, confused. You're really not very smart, are you? It's unfortunate, she sighs. I have a surprise for my son, who works so hard. Let's all help relieve his fatigue. The point is, my mother-in-law wants to go on a trip with her son, but she doesn't want to pay for it herself. So she came up with the idea of inviting me and my daughter along, expecting me to cover the expenses. Who would want to go on such a trip? I certainly don't. Besides, we can't afford it. Let's make it a grand trip, she insists. No, I never said I was going, I respond, trying to stay calm. Let me think about this for a while, I say, ending the conversation with my mother-in-law, unsure of what to do next. When my husband came home that night, he was in a terrible mood. It was clear why. My mother-in-law must have told him everything. I heard you disobeyed my mother today, he said. I was just telling the truth, I replied. What? Are you saying we can't take her on vacation? That's right. We don't have the money for that, I explained. But my mother-in-law had already told my husband about the trip, framing it as a surprise. What's the surprise in this? If we're not managing our finances well, it's your fault, he retorted. How can I manage what we don't have? I asked, trying to keep calm. Are you trying to say I don't make enough money? Well, it's not much, I admitted. You've got to be kidding me, he snapped. Anyway, I'm definitely going on this trip. You've got to plan everything. That's an order. If you can't do it, we're getting a divorce. I considered divorcing him right then and there, but what would our daughter think? That was my only concern. In the end, I had to search for a hotel, even though I wasn't sure about the trip. After speaking with my husband, my mother-in-law became incredibly picky. I want a room with an open-air bathtub, she demanded. The meals should be the most luxurious at the hotel. I wondered how much it would cost to accommodate such requests, but if I didn't listen, I knew I'd be subjected to another storm of sarcasm. So, I decided to take a bold action, one I wasn't entirely proud of. In doing so, I managed to fulfill all of my mother-in-law's requests. She was ecstatic and insufferable when she found out, saying something incomprehensible like, "It's because I suggested everything to her." My husband, of course, lectured me over dinner, as usual. But after enduring this for 4 years, I had become immune, so I let him talk. The only saving grace was that my husband didn't lash out in front of our daughter. He wasn't comfortable showing that side of himself to her. On the day of the trip, I found myself in the driver's seat. I had rented the car, so naturally, I was the one driving. My husband sat in the passenger seat as if he owned the place, while my mother-in-law sat in the back, ignoring our daughter and muttering to herself about souvenirs. I had been driving all morning, but neither my husband nor my mother-in-law showed any sign of offering to help. I wasn't allowed to take a break until we finally stopped at a service area when my daughter needed to use the restroom. I quickly took her to the restroom and hurried back to the car, only to find that the car was gone. I frantically searched the parking lot, but the car was nowhere in sight. In disbelief, I called my husband, but he didn't answer. I then called my mother-in-law. "You took too long," she laughed, telling me they had left us behind. I tried to explain that I had just gone to the bathroom for a few minutes, but my husband's voice cut me off. "This is your fault for not obeying me. You have no right to be on this trip," he said coldly. "Was that your plan all along?" I asked, trying to make sense of it. "So, what if it was?" he replied. "I'm fine, but what about our daughter, Sarah? She's just like you, acting cocky lately. She even talked back to Mom when she complained about you. She needs to be disciplined too. But she was looking forward to this trip, so I'll reconsider when both of you are sorry. If you understand, you can go home now." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there, wondering what to do next. We were so far from home. "Mom, are you okay? Did Dad and Grandma leave us?" Sarah's small voice brought me back to reality. "I guess so," I said softly. "They're so mean, aren't they?" "Yeah, I think so too," I admitted. "Are we going home?" she asked. "Yeah, but you were looking forward to this trip." "Only because it was with you, Mom. If you're going home, I want to go home too." "Then let's go on an adventure together," I suggested, trying to lift her spirits. "Adventure?" she repeated, her carefree smile lighting up her face. Her smile saved me in that moment. I called my friend Ella, who lived nearby, and explained the situation. She quickly came to pick us up and took us home. Later that night, after making sure Sarah was asleep, Ella asked, "What are you going to do?" "I think I'm getting a divorce," I replied. "That's good. You've put up with it for too long," she said. "Yeah, and I definitely don't want this husband who harms my daughter anymore," I agreed. I signed the divorce papers that had been sitting in the drawer and asked Ella to fill in the witness box. My mother-in-law's name was already signed in the other witness box, so I was able to file the divorce papers right away. 3 days after returning home, my phone rang just as I dropped Sarah off at kindergarten. "You've got to be kidding me. You're the one with the problem. Why haven't you paid for the accommodation?" my husband demanded. "Because you're the one who left me," I retorted. "You should have paid in advance." "Oh, really? And why should it cost $6,000 for the hotel?" "It's the result of fulfilling all your dear mother's wishes," I replied. "If you and your mother had such a great time, why don't you split the bill? That would be $3,000 each." At that moment, I heard a woman's voice in the background. "It's time to pay. If you don't, I'll call the police," she said. "No problem. My wife will pay. She's on her way here right now," my husband lied. "Where is your wife now?" the woman asked. "At home." "I checked your address, and it seems you're quite far from home. You left her at the service area, and now you're telling her to come back just to pay?" "Excuse me?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. "Your wife and I have been friends since high school," Ella began. "I was the one who picked her and your daughter up from the service area. I shamelessly asked my old friend for help with this trip, and she told me she would offer her hotel, where she's the owner, for free." Ella continued. "Back in high school, she was struggling with her future. Her family owned a renowned hotel, but she had other dreams. As the only daughter, she couldn't pursue those dreams and had to take over the hotel, even though it brought her to tears. At that time, I cheered her on more than anyone else, and she felt she owed me. This time, she wanted to return the favor. I told her that she didn't have to cover the cost, that she could stay at the hotel for free. But she's not here. I have no personal connection with you, which means you're simply hotel guests. And as guests, I expect you to pay the full price. All right, look, my husband interjected. Why don't you pay with your credit card for now, and I'll reimburse you later? I don't want to do that, Ella responded firmly. It's not that you don't want to, it's that you can't. Am I right? Ella pressed. Wait, what do you mean? My mother-in-law demanded. Your son's salary is only $1,200 a month. The credit card limit is probably around $3,000 at most. Are you saying your wife has been lying about your income? My mother-in-law questioned my husband, who stood there in silence. He's a salesman, and if he secures a contract, he gets an incentive and earns more. However, despite his many sales, your husband only receives the minimum guaranteed salary. His income is nowhere near what he claims. Don't tell me you're planning to pay with your savings, Ella added, narrowing her eyes. That money is for the divorce settlement, alimony, and child support, I clarified. What the hell are you talking about? My husband snapped. I filed for divorce, I said calmly. Didn't you say you'd divorce me anytime? Well, I submitted the papers that day as fast as I could. So, we're not married anymore. Wait a minute, he pleaded. I won't wait, I replied, my mind made up. In the end, my husband promised Ella he would pay in installments. I then hired an attorney and formally filed for custody of our daughter, along with child support and alimony. I took my daughter back to my parents' house. As it turns out, one of the regulars at Ella's hotel is an executive at my husband's company. This executive told him he had to pay for the stay in full. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law, who had divorced when my ex-husband was in middle school and had been planning on having him take care of her in the future, found out about his actual income. She contacted me, asking me to reconsider the divorce. I can't believe she has the nerve to say that after everything she's put me through. My ex-husband also called, insisting that our daughter needs a father and that we should remarry and live together. It's baffling because my daughter is perfectly happy living with my parents and me. He never took care of her before, so I don't know why he's suddenly concerned now. After the divorce, my ex-husband moved back in with his mother. His poor performance at work and lack of planning meant he applied for that trip's vacation at the last minute. The fact that he couldn't pay for the hotel became known through the company executive, and now he's feeling quite small at work. Next weekend, I'll be taking my daughter to that same hotel for a stay, and I've started a new job to build a solid foundation for our future. It's been a long time since I last worked, but it's so much more fulfilling than the marriage I had. The idea that children are better off with both parents together just doesn't apply to our situation. What's truly important is for children to have happy, smiling parents. I've learned so much from this divorce, and one thing that hasn't changed is my commitment to always putting my daughter first. With her by my side, I can give my best effort anywhere. People like my ex-husband seem to have endless confidence, but I wonder where they get it from. Regardless, I know the divorce